Ki Jai. We start with the seven realities: existence, love, sacrifice, renunciation, knowledge, control, and surrender. I give no importance to creed, dogma, caste, or the performance of religious ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding of the following. Number one, the only real existence is that of the one and only God, who is the self in every finite self. Number two, the only real love is the love for this infinity, God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth, God. Three, the only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself, are sacrificed. The only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly
Yeah.
duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. Five, the only real knowledge is the real knowledge. The only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and in so called bad, in saint and in so called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand without expectation of reward. When compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred, to try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feeling for each one, and to harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even those who harm you. Six, the only real control is the discipline of the senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of character. Seven, the only real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual, amidst every kind of hardship, is resigned with the perfect calm to the will of God. Tar Meher Baba Ki Jai. So, as we were discussing yesterday, there is Trello. Hold on. Hi, Mahu. Hi, Kama. We started a little late. So, we finished God and the individual. So, that was last week. So, we finished at the 2nd of, 10th of December. We start with the next one, which is perfection. Perfection has multiple ideas that are covered in concepts. So let's just read the essence. Two types of perfection: only relative perfection in duality, spiritual perfection distinguished from excellence, all forms of excellence in spiritual perfection. Perfection must be all sided. Perfection includes opposites: full development of human rationality, and perfection is man becoming God or God becoming man. So there are many words that have, in at least in the Baba world, have acquired a special and deeper significance, though they may be very, very simple to start with, because of the power that Baba has given to it and the importance Baba has associated in the books that he's written, right? So words like individualization, words like true values, words like perfection, for example, are amazing. Right? Simple word like God man. God man is very common and popular in usage in India. But Godman has altogether a special significance in the Baba literature. So in the same way, perfection is altogether an important concept, and I think the concept of perfection and infinity are two things that I love in discourses. The concept of mathematical infinity versus spiritual infinity, and the concept of perfection. Again, the concept of perfection in duality and perfection in big R reality. That's beautifully handled in this chapter. So, anything else before we start? Any thoughts?
So where is the text, Karthik?
It's coming up.
Oh, okay.
I was just in the first part of the chapter. Yeah, so let's start. I'll read for a bit and then we can rotate. Yeah. Perfection. Tar Meher Baba ki jai. Two types of perfection. In order to have a comprehensive idea of what is implied in perfection, it is necessary to classify it into two categories. There is spiritual perfection, which consists in the inner realization of a transcendent state of consciousness beyond duality. So what is perfection? Per- is consists of the realization of a transcendent state of consciousness beyond duality. So that's the way it's defined here. In fact, we can underline this. Right? Yeah.
I'm sorry, Karthik, I don't see no text. You have the
Oh,
text. Right?
sorry. I didn't start sharing my screen.
Aha, now we're talking.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Because these words, these concepts is hard to follow, so it has to be audio, reading, everything for us to
Yes.
understand.
Yeah. It's.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I usually start
no,
the
it's
call.
okay, sure.
I didn't
Not
even
a problem.
realize. I didn't. Yeah. Okay. Continuing. There is also perfection as expressed and seen in the domain of duality. All related existence, which is a part of the manifold world of manifestation, admits of degrees. And when one is concerned with perfection as seen in this manifested world, one finds that, like other things subject to duality, it also admits of degrees. Bad and good, weakness and strength, vice and virtue are all opposites within duality. In fact, all these aspects are expressions of the one reality in different degrees. Thus,
This is a very interesting, Karthik.
mhm,
That what Baba says. He says here the last sentence that all these aspects, that means all these aspects of duality, are expressions of the one reality in different degree. So, uh, if we believe that God is everywhere and in everything, of course, even He is also in duality. It's just a matter of a degree, how He appears to be. Yeah, like that.
yeah,
Is that,
correct.
I mean,
Correct.
what do you understand of this sentence?
So I understand it a little differently. So
Aha.
he is there as an expression in all of those degrees, right? So it's not a change in degree that God, yeah, you can even take it like that. But uh, so if you go back to the nothing and the everything, the core concept of Baba. So after the whim, the nothing comes into life, and we I mean comes into life, or at least the manifested reality is there, and we, thanks to the sanskaras, think that this is apparent reality, right? Now, is nothing God? Absolutely, because everything is only God, right? So in that sense, you are absolutely right. Even what we see around us and think and associate some apparent reality to it is God. But the bigger point that's being made here is everything in this manifested reality in this world of phenomenal activity and phenomenal existence, all of them are uh, things that are expressed in degrees. So it's not
Yeah,
necessarily binary. That's the point that's being made. So everything goes
yes.
from two extremes. There is a bad and a good, weakness and a strength, vice and a virtue, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it actually, you're very right. This is also very important to accept that in the world of duality, everything is manifested in different degrees.
Correct.
So it's all good. It's
Correct.
not for us to criticize. I guess Baba has a message here for us to evaluate or criticize this or that, because he's also, all of this are a manifestation of one in different degrees. So,
Correct.
manifestation of the reality in duality. Yeah.
True.
So, hmm, yeah, it's very, this actually, if we really take it to heart and live by it, that these creates a tremendous amount of detachment and inner peace within us.
True.
Right? Yeah.
So, also, this is one of the beautiful concepts that is brought out elsewhere in other chapters and discourses as well, where
Mhm.
the human mind likes to classify everything in binary terms. We like to
Yes.
classify behavior as good and bad, classify people, action, experiences as binary. But Baba says there is nothing binary. In reality, it's all only degrees. So that's a great takeaway that discourses gave me, Baba gave me. But then here he's just making a hint of that, the same concept.
Ah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's true.
Okay, let's go to the next subtopic. So the next subtopic is only relative perfection in duality. Thus, evil is not utterly evil, but goodness in its lowest degree. Weakness is not mere incapacity, but strength in its lowest degree. And
One
wise,
second.
sure,
Read this again.
sure,
Weakness is not. Can you please read this
sure,
again?
sure. I'll start from the beginning. Thus,
Yeah.
evil is not utterly evil, but goodness in its lowest degree.
Hmm.
Weakness is not mere incapacity, but strength in its lowest degree. And vice is not pure vice, but virtue at its lowest.
Only if people of the world know this.
Exactly. So this is
The
exactly what I was
media,
telling.
all this political thing, all this, Baba calls it tamasha. All this tamasha is nothing but a zero.
Nothing but a zero. Now more than a zero, it's not either or. Both are the
Yeah,
same. Both are the same.
both are
So
the
if
same.
there is nothing called like if you take the world of politics, there's nothing called left and right. Both are the same. It's just little littleness of right makes it left, and littleness of left makes it right. Right. There is nothing like a bad person. He is also good, but his goodness is lesser. Right.
That's
That
very
is
true.
something that's something that we can reflect upon, and once you reflect upon and understand it, your ability to deal with the world becomes better, because
Yes,
in the way we humans before we approach the concepts of spirituality, we classify, and based on that classification react in certain ways to certain people. Certain ways to certain classifications.
yes,
This gives us the benefit of equipoise. This gives us the
yes.
benefit. yeah, this concept gives us the benefit of trying to see everything as the same, because now a person armed with this knowledge looks at the left, the right, the good, the bad, the vice, the virtue as mere degrees, and all representing the same reality.
Yes, very true.
Yes,
Very
yeah,
true.
yeah,
Same reality, yeah.
correct,
Manifested in a form of duality and its degrees.
correct. All the
Okay,
aspects of duality, I'm continuing, all the
sure.
aspects of duality have a minimum and a maximum, and all intervening degrees. Perfection is no exception to this. The whole range of humanity is included within the two extremes of perfection and imperfection. And both perfection and imperfection are essentially matters of comparison, contrast, and relative existence. Perfection in the domain of duality is only relative perfection. It is only
Mhm.
when one compares it with imperfection that it appears to one as perfection. So I'll read the
Very,
last few lines.
very interesting.
Yeah, very,
Sure.
very interesting. So I'll read the last part again. Perfection in the domain of duality is only relative perfection. It is only when one compares it with imperfection that it appears to one as perfection.
So it's actually in relation to imperfection that we are seeing the reality in a form of comparison. See, we have a concept of what is bad, right? So
Correct.
we are like when we created the antithesis of bad and we think it is good or it's
Hmm.
perfect, it's only in context of comparing it with what was bad, Baba
Correct.
said.
Correct. Correct. Baba says that. So I think the other, yeah, he's coming to that exactly what I was going to say in the next paragraph. Spiritual perfection is different from excellence. You can have the greatest mathematician, you can have the greatest musician. Is that perfection? No, it's only excellence. He uses another term to represent that, right?
Yeah.
Perfection in the domain of spirituality is reserved for the perfect master, for the for reaching the goal of humanity. That is perfection. The if you excel, or if you have certain skills or knowledge or something in in the phenomenal world, and you have reached the maximum capacity of that knowledge or skill, that is still only excellence. And that's the point he's going to make in the next paragraph. Let's read.
Okay.
Spiritual perfection distinguished from excellence. When perfection is concerned with duality, it consists in the excellence of some attribute or capacity. In this context, perfection in one aspect does not necessarily include perfection in other aspects. For example, someone who is perfect in science may not be perfect in singing, or someone who is perfect in singing may not be perfect in science. There is a sense in which excellence can be exhibited even in crimes. When a
Mhm.
murder is committed in such a manner that not a single clue is left for tracing the murderer, it is called a perfect crime. Even in crimes or sins, then there is a sort of perfection. But this type of perfection, which consists in the excellence of a quality or capacity, should be carefully distinguished from spiritual perfection, which is not in the domain of duality. Yeah, beautiful uh, delineation of what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, going further,
Mhm.
the different types of existence that are characteristic.
Excellence.
Sorry.
Excellent.
Yeah. The different types of excellence that are characteristic of duality are all within the scope of the intellect. For such excellence can be easily envisaged by the extension, and in brackets in imagination, of something good that is found in the limited experience of everyday life.
Right.
The perfection that belongs to the spiritually realized souls is not in the domain of duality, and as such is entirely beyond the scope of the intellect. Very key point. So
Yeah.
between the spiritual perfection and perfection as we know it in the phenomenal world, the key is one is in the domain of the intellect and one is not in the domain of intellect.
I have a question. Something came up, but I think it's good to continue. You know, sometimes Baba answers the question as we read. If it doesn't, then I'll bring it up. Go ahead.
Sure. Perfect. Thank you. It has no parallel in the domain of duality. When a person becomes spiritually perfect, he knows that nothing exists but God, and that what seems to exist in the domain of duality and is capable of being grasped by the intellect is only illusion. For the spiritually perfect, God is the only reality. Science, art, music, weakness, strength, good, and evil are all nothing to him but dreams.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay, so I think Baba is answering my question. So read the letter. I tell you what came to my mind.
perfect. I'm glad. His perfection consists in the knowledge of one indivisible existence. So the spiritually perfect, his perfection is the knowledge. And what is the knowledge of? The knowledge of the one indivisible existence. And I would go, he is living in that state of one indivisible existence, not merely having the knowledge, because we know that the perfect master and the avatar actually live in that state of being simultaneously in the phenomenal world and being completely aware of the bigger reality.
So you brought it up. Okay, so I'm going to continue on that note. Yeah, I that was my question. So I was just thinking, if the perfection in a domain of reality is defined as such, that only is a reflection of intellect, but within the scope of the intellect. Um, so why does the spiritually perfect person, like perfect masters, right,
Mhm.
who have chosen to be from the level of samadhi degree, the
Your
profound
your your voice broke up. You'll have to repeat.
okay. Let me let me be let me be more focused on the speaker part. So
I'm not
yeah,
able
that
to
was oh, you can hear me?
still can't hear you clearly.
Hmm, I don't know what to do. Um, I'm still using the same setup, same
Okay.
speakers, audio. Hold on, let
So
me
I'll tell you
I
what's
wasn't
happening, and that may help you understand what the problem is. There is a up and down and change in the modulation that's happening in a random manner.
yeah.
Yeah, now it's better.
Yeah, I think there was something going on in the background that uh, it was interfering to this, so I got rid of it. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Can you just repeat your comment or question, please?
Yeah, I was just thinking, if the domain of reality is, I'm sorry, perfection in a domain of reality is is defined as such, then how would a perfect master, who's a spiritually perfect being, absolute perfect being, would function in the, in the reality, in the duality, in the world of duality, and get his job done. His job is to make everyone perfect. That's why he's a perfect master, his name, by Baba's or by God's design or order. So how would they deal with all this, that but then I think in a way I got my answer, because here Baba says, for the spiritually perfect, God is the only reality. Science, art, music, weakness, strength, good, is nothing but a dream. So this tells me that he has this knowledge, rock-like knowledge, that God is the only reality. Everything else is nothing but the dream. That's why Baba says, I think it's in a God Speaks, is in supplement or somewhere. I think the difference between avatar and perfect master. Baba says the difference is they both have the same God consciousness. They both also get the creation consciousness, but perfect master acts. Baba says acts, whereas avatar becomes. See, that's a
Correct.
difference.
Correct. Perfect.
So he may be living among us, but everything is just a dream for him. But he's just acting as, coming along with us, for example, or how Baba, I'm sure, acted that way during his life. Not acted, but they bring themselves to our level and speaking our language, where in their reality, they know all of this is nothing but a dream. Yeah.
Perfect.
Well,
Perfect.
mm,
Perfect. So, in fact, he brings out differences between the avatar and perfect master and the way they sleep as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
very interesting. Yeah.
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 Okay. Let's go to the next paragraph. All forms of excellence in spiritual perfection. When a spiritually perfect being wants to use all his knowledge and powers, it is always for the spiritual upliftment of other souls. So, like you rightly said, it's for perfecting the rest of humanity that a perfect being literally wants to use all his knowledge and powers. I continue.
Yeah.
His knowledge of others is not based upon their expressed thoughts. Thoughts come first, and its expression in words follows later. As he directly knows the minds of all, he is not dependent upon the expression of thought. Universal
Interesting.
mind. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For him, words are unnecessary.
Uh-huh.
If he wants to know something before it is manifested, he can do so. But he does so only when it is necessary for spiritual reasons.
Yes.
Yeah. In the same way, if he wants to show excellence in any other matter, he can show it without any difficulty.
Yeah.
All sorts of excellence are latent in spiritual perfection.
Yes.
So you could be the best. I mean, the perfect master can show the skills of any perfection very, very easily.
Yeah. And, it's, Baba said, even let's say we come um, to their presence, and he already knows what's going on in our mind, and we may express our thoughts, but he really doesn't pay any attention to that thought that is being manifested. In other words, he's not going to waste his time because he knows this is nothing.
Exactly.
It looks like it, yeah.
I mean, for us, it is we are lost in that thought and we are consumed by it, probably, depending on how complicated or what situation we find ourselves in. But the master knows the end game, knows the impact of this thought, what we are going to do with the thought, and so on and so forth. Yeah, you're right.
That's why Baba brings that concept of real obedience. It says obedience is greater than love. Because
Correct.
if you obey as such, you get there to the destination faster. Yeah.
Absolutely. Good point. Yeah. So, continuing. Krishna, as the avatar, was not only spiritually perfect, but perfection personified. He was
Mhm,
also perfect in everything. If he had wanted to, he could have shown himself as a perfect drunkard, a
mhm,
perfect sinner, a
mhm,
perfect rogue, or
mhm,
a perfect murderer. That
mhm.
would have shocked the world. Though possessed of perfection in every respect, it was not necessary for him to exhibit it in fulfilling his mission. The
Yeah.
spiritually perfect can exhibit supreme excellence in any mode of life that they may be required to adopt for the spiritual upliftment of other souls, but they do not do so merely to show themselves as perfect. This excellence is used by them only when there is a spiritual need for it, not merely to satisfy the curiosity of others. When they
Interesting.
use such, yeah, when they use such excellence, they do so with utter detachment. Just as a person who wears gloves may touch the dirt of the world without getting soiled, a spiritually perfect being can be engaged in universal activity without being bound by it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can be the perfect thief, you can be whatever, you can have as part of the role of the manifested experience of that perfect being in reality. He may do any of the roles and he's not going to get attached to it, and he's doing it only for giving a further push to a few souls, or handle a particular contextual situation in the best manner possible. But again, we have to remember why this happens. Why this happens is because he is his knowledge and power manifested, so he can do anything. The perfect being, so he's able to invoke the powers, or the skills, and the Baba's word is capacity. The capacity to do anything in the domain of reality, from a perfection to the point of perfection.
Yeah. Only if he finds the need for it. And
Need for it.
another thing is, yeah, another thing that Baba said, he used a good analogy that it's like when you want to do something that you don't want your hand to get dirty or oily or whatever, you wear gloves.
Hmm.
Same thing as all this perfect being. They do all this universal activity within their universal mind without being, Baba says, bound by it. In other words, it really doesn't impact them,
Untouched by it. Yeah.
untouched by it. Yes.
Yes. So let's continue. The next subtitle is Perfection Must Be All Sided.
Mhm.
Spiritual perfection is the full development of all the aspects of personality, so perfection must be all sided. Perfection in one aspect is not perfection, it is only a lopsided growth of a faculty or capacity. resulting in inflexibility or the incapacity to adjust oneself to the ever changing and multitudinous vicissitudes of life.
Yeah.
Such a person cannot maintain a moving equilibrium of mind while keeping pace with the swift changes of life.
Mhm.
If he is in an environment that, by its nature, gives scope for the faculty he has developed, he is temporarily happy and enjoys a sense of being in harmony with the world. But if he finds himself in a hostile environment where his faculty is unsuitable, he has a sense of failure and his poise is disturbed.
Yes.
Therefore, perfection implies perfection in every respect.
Yeah.
For it to be
Yeah.
really perfection, it has to be truly all pervasive, all aspects.
Yeah. Just pause here. For
Mhm,
example, these are good, really good if we really take it to heart and start really these words to practicing it, to really, as Baba says, live by it, live these words, live it.
mhm. Yeah.
Um, so with me, Kartik, well, that must have been my son's chorus. There was a junction of my life with Baba that I went through very difficult time and suffering and stuff like that, with others and and so after that, it's like Baba took me out of this area and put me elsewhere, just lift me up, put me elsewhere. What I did is I kind of withdrew from almost everybody. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I am still because I find in many ways, Kartik, I find this world to be very hostile, and it has nothing to do with my definition. It's just that the suffering that people are going through.
Hmm.
So uh, I am not I am not poised as Baba says here. No, I no. Uh, I'm just withdrawing. I'm abstaining from the situation or people like this and so forth, instead of um, remaining untouched by it and seeing it in a domain of nothing and all that. So obviously we're not there yet.
You're not
That's
there,
all.
but you're in the right direction. If you're able to step back, like you said, abstain, like you said, step away or not intervene in all the hostile, so-called or apparently hostile experiences that you're being subject to or experiencing, that's a good start. You will get to a point where it matures to poise. It matures to non-reaction, leading to recognition of the true value of that experience. The true value of the experience is, it's like you said, a sanskaric overhang. It's something that you already had as part of the life plan, and you just have to go through it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you know what? What really helps in a situation like this, I just realized, is the amount of love that all of this divine love is, Baba says, latent in us. It's there. It's really there. Though, if we live in that domain, then even if we are in a hostile situation and so forth, we are able to change that to good, to joy, to well-being, instead of being suffered by it. You know what I mean? It's a
Yes.
kind of a masterful act of being that perhaps once we gain Baba's love, we're able to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll continue. Perfection includes opposites. If you try to grasp the nature of perfection by means of a set standard, implying an opposite, you are bound to limit it and thus fail to understand its real significance.
Mhm.
So, the meaning of this line is, let's say there is the good and bad, right? The easiest piece of comparison or binary that we are used to all the time. Now, let's
Mhm.
say we have this spectrum of good and bad. There's one good on one side and bad on the other.
Yes.
You are only going to tend towards one or the other, but then it true definition of perfection is the whole spectrum, everything in its totality, right? So
Right.
perfection, I continue, perfection includes the opposites and transcends them. Therefore, a perfect one, now P and O is in capital, therefore, a perfect one is not bound by any rule or limited ideal.
Uh-huh.
He,
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the meaning of transcending them. I was going to
yes,
ask what that. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, he is beyond good and bad, but his law for those who are good provides good rewards, and for those who are bad, it responds in their own coin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Continues, Krishna proved to Arjuna, who was his devotee, that his apparent bringing about of the physical and mental annihilation of the vicious Kauravas was for their spiritual salvation.
Mm-hmm.
So, Arjuna is bringing about the physical and mental annihilation. He basically killed a lot of Kauravas for their spiritual salvation. Perfection might manifest itself through killing or saving according to the spiritual demands of the situation.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So again, there are many analogies that when we perform a particular action, if done in a detached and a spiritual manner, it might actually be carrying out something like what Arjuna did. What Arjuna did, he realized after the Gita on his role, it being something that he had to do, and the killings were not actually killings of his. He was consumed by guilt and apprehension of how one could attack and go after his own blood. That was the point of the Bhagavad Gita, right? So, or
Yeah.
rather, the trigger for Baba as Krishna giving him that famous discourse of Bhagavad Gita. Now, the takeaway from the previous paragraph is he learns that, and he learns that it's a role that he had to perform, and he had to do that for the spiritual emancipation of the Kauravas,
Yeah. Yeah. So we really cannot understand this with our intellect.
or
No.
the grace of a perfect master. So in the case of Arjuna, he had the grace of a perfect master who explicitly laid it out to him and said, "Hey, this is it. Go for it, dude. You got to do what you got to do."
So Arjuna was a disciple of Krishna, right?
And one of the Pandavas and the ace warrior. He was the lead warrior. But
Uh-huh.
after they get to the war field, he
Uh-huh.
develops cold feet. He says, "Hey, across the aisle, I mean, across the other side of the war, I see my guru, the person who taught me archery. I see my blood. I see my relatives. I see my cousins. They've all grown up with me. How can I attack them? Is this what I'm supposed to do?" And
Uh,
though he was a very fierce and ace warrior, he was a very, very skilled warrior, right? So he was a very good shot, but he goes through this uh, questioning period where he says, "Is this right?" Because he is caught in the binary of morality. He's caught in the complex
yeah.
of good and bad, And
Yes.
over Bhagavad Gita, over that discourse, Krishna actually unveils to him the true nature of the true values, and then tells him to continue the war. And then, of course, he prevails, and the Pandavas win over the Kauravas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Very nice.
yeah. I continue. The
Hmm.
heart of a perfect one is at once as soft as butter and as hard as steel.
Hmm.
Perfection is not limited in its expression to any one of the opposites and does not exclude the possibility of finding expression through the opposite.
Okay, pause.
Sure,
I need to get that.
sure,
Can you please reread this again?
sure,
Perfection
sure,
is
sure. The heart of a perfect one is at once as soft as butter and as hard as steel. Per- Perfection is not limited in its expression to any one of the opposites and does not exclude the possibility of finding expression through the opposite.
oh, see, does
So,
not exclude the possibility of finding expression.
so you can be soft as butter and the same at the same time be hard as steel. See, the other
Yeah,
way of understanding this is the perfect master is not just dealing with one individual as we physically see him. He has the capacity of omniscience, which
yeah,
Baba refers to earlier. He also has omnipotence, and hence he's actually at the same time doing multiple things for different people, and he's taking all the gradations, all the degrees of good and bad, and dealing with them literally simultaneously.
simultaneously.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I will continue. It can express itself through either of the opposites according to the logic implied in the situation. Now, what does the word logic here mean? Now, logic here is the divine rule, right? The
Yeah,
stack
yeah,
of divine rules, right? So there is the divine laws that apply, and that's largely you can say one could argue is just sanskaras, right? So the according to the sanskaras of the individuals that the perfect master is working upon, he expresses himself through either the good side or the bad side, or which side of the opposite that's relevant to the sanskaric construct of that context.
ah, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
that is why perfection transcends the opposites and is capable of giving a rational response to all the possible situations in life. It
Hmm.
ensures perfect adaptability without surrendering the standpoint of truth, and secures an unshakable peace and sense of harmony in the midst of diverse situations, which must be baffling to those who have not achieved all sided development.
Yes.
So what I was saying earlier, right? So it must be shocking that if somebody sees this from outside, or of course, it's not possible for them to understand the working of a perfect master unless you have some level of progress on the spiritual path. But let us say, even for someone with at least an academic understanding, it's baffling, it's mind-boggling to imagine that this omniscience and omnipotence is actually put to work every single minute, every single second of the existence, right? So the perfect master is doing that.
In other words, they can, at any time, they can transcend any situation,
Yes,
for the sake of humanity, for the sake of people who are involved, if they find it necessary.
exactly. They can
Yeah.
intervene, they can adjust, they can transcend from one opposite to the other, they can make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next subtopic, full development of human rationality. Human activities are limited by the opposites, and perfection is beyond them. It should not be imagined, however, that perfection has no human element about it. When human beings are unhappy, they laugh to make themselves and others happy. But even a perfect one who is eternally happy is not without a sense of humor. In other words, perfection does not consist in being inhuman, but superhuman. It is the full development of that rationality which is implicit in humanity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
it,
perfect ones, yeah. Perfect ones have elements of what human is adapted to, but theirs is superhuman and not inhuman. And yeah, yeah.
yeah.
um,
So he uses another word here. He uses rationality. Now, what is rationality? Again, I would say it's limited comprehension from a duality perspective. But then what perfection does transcends rationality, because you cannot rationally understand the work of a perfect master, right? So for example, you will not be able to rationally justify Arjuna attacking his family. For example, let's just go back to the analogy we saw earlier. We cannot
mhm.
rationally understand the analogies that Baba says in action and inaction, where a knife should be used and a surgery be performed to remove the infection which would otherwise spread. Now, he uses another example. I mean, you'd feel that how can one be so cruel to use a knife upon someone who's already infected? But then there is a larger understanding the doctor has of the impact of the use of that knife and the causing of that temporary harm, which can give relief to that patient. In the same way, Baba gives another example. A mother can indulge in petty thievery. She can steal something to feed her progeny, her offspring, right? Is that
Yes.
bad? It's not bad because it is for a larger good. So, literally everything is driven by context, and human rationality is limited in understanding it, because unless you are a perfect one, or unless you are close enough to the context to know all these backgrounds and all the things that go into that individual's action, you are never going to get a full view of why someone did what they did. And you are nobody. Only a perfect one knows, and they are in charge and in control.
I go one step further, Carter,
Uh-huh.
Kartik, and that is, so it brings me or us to this conclusion that don't even bother try to understand this situation or have an analysis on it, and the
Yes,
no,
yes,
just leave it in a God's hand, leave it in the
exactly,
perfect one, and let him do the job.
exactly,
Let
perfect.
him do the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I used to keep thinking of an analogy in the real world, right? So, like you said, we have to recognize that we are in a cab. We are not in a car where we are in the driver's seat, right? We
Right.
are actually
Right.
in a taxi, and there is a driver.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
when you are in a new town and you take a taxi, Do you micromanage the driver? No, you don't. Do you tell him what to do? No, you don't. He knows his car, he knows his roads, he knows where to take us, and we just sit back and relax and submit to his will. Submit to this. This is a very mundane example, right? So I'm going from A to B in a new location. I give the information that I need to go to B. I make the commercial transaction or whatever, it's a Uber, or whatever, and then I sit back and let him do his job. In the same way, we just need to step back and leave the perfect master to do what he's doing.
Yes.
Yeah,
And trust. There's a very famous thing by saying by Baba. Baba says, trust God completely. He would solve all your difficulties.
perfect.
So it's a
Absolutely.
question of trust. Yeah,
Complete trust. Complete
complete
trust
trust.
linked to surrender and linked to obedience, like you earlier pointed out.
Yes.
Yes. Next subtitle is perfection is man becoming God or God becoming man.
Wow. Okay.
Perfection does not belong to God as God, nor does it belong to man as man. This is something to meditate upon, right? So, even this concept of perfection does not even belong to either God or man. And then he continues, perfection is attained when man becomes God or when God becomes man. The finite being who is conscious of his being finite is obviously short of perfection. But when he is conscious of being one with the infinite, he is perfect. That is what happens when man gives up illusion of being finite and attains godhood by realizing his divinity.
Yes.
If by the infinite one means that which is opposed to the finite or is separate from the finite and necessarily other than the finite, this infinite is already limited by its being unable to assert itself in and through the and in and through the finite. I'll read that line again.
Yeah.
If by the infinite one means that which is opposed to the finite or is separate from the finite and necessarily other than the finite, this infinite is already limited by its being unable to assert itself in and through the finite. This is a very key point.
Yeah.
So Baba points this out at multiple discourses, but then if the infinite is separate from the finite, there's a problem to start with because it's not infinite. Because infinite actually includes the finite, and
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's a key concept that we need to internalize, right? In other words,
This is very quickly, we
mm-hmm,
can use this logic
mm-hmm,
for people who don't believe in uh, who don't believe in God in human form. I mean, there are a lot of people like Muslims or Australian, they have a difficulty really accepting personal God, although they are uh, adoring and connected with impersonal God. But
correct.
their question is, how could a God be contained in a human body or that mind? Like they see it this way. And the answer is, if he is God, then he could be finite too. So, in other words, he could be human too.
Oh,
Like that.
wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. I love it. In fact, as you rightly said, that's a big struggle for the Abrahamic religions, right?
Yes.
And you're spot on. If the sifat, the attribute of God, is infinite, it already includes finite, so he should be in everything.
Exactly. He
Yeah,
could be human too. He could be anything. you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And from there, we go to the Vedantic concept of he could be anything. In fact, he is everything.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
He is
Beautiful.
everything.
So each time we think and meditate on these concepts, something unblocks in our head. And thank you for pointing that out, because as you rightly said, when you talk about Baba, when you talk about uh, spirituality in the way we understand it and follow in the Baba world, it's a big struggle from the from the point of the concept of perfect master and avatar, right? Even the
Yes,
prophet, yeah, even the prophet, there is a very clear distinction and definition of how they see the prophet, right?
right.
Yeah, great. uh I continue the
Yeah,
last line. In
sure.
other words, perfection cannot belong to such an infinite. The infinite therefore has to discover its unlimited life in and through the finite without getting limited by this process.
That's it.
Beautiful. The infinite,
Yeah.
therefore, has to discover its unlimited life in and through the finite without getting limited by this process.
Yes.
Beautiful line again.
Beautifully said by
Yes.
Bob.
Yeah.
Discover its unlimited life in
In
and
and
through
through.
the finite.
And
Yeah.
without getting
In
limited by
and
this
through.
process. So
Yeah.
when the
Earlier,
infinite.
Baba said, yeah, earlier Baba said that they are not, it doesn't touch them. But
Yes.
here he is um, adding more to it.
So it's like the infinite, Paramatma, God, unlimited, the bigger reality, therefore, has to discover its unlimited life through getting into a physical form. That becomes Baba, right? Finite. He took a physical form which was finite, which was a physical body, but he was never limited by that limited body, because he operated in the realm of the infinite, and he
Within the finite.
exactly within the finite, through the finite, within and through
Through
the
the
finite.
finite. Yeah.
Amazing.
That's why Baba oftentimes, when he was with his disciples, early disciples, he said, you're forgetting. I'm here with you. We laugh, we joke, we eat together, we play cricket. But sometimes you forget that, with his sign language, that I am God. You
Correct.
forget that I am God.
Correct. Correct. So let's do the last paragraph of this beautiful chapter. I've enjoyed reading this. God's perfection is revealed only when he manifests himself as man. So it now becomes a necessary condition. Like we saw in the previous one and compared it to Baba coming down in physical form, he continues that concept here. God's perfection is revealed only when he manifests himself as man. The conscious descent of God into the limited form of man is the avatar. This again is a case of perfection. Thus,
Yes.
we have perfection when the finite transcends its limits and realizes its infinity, or when the infinite gives up its supposed aloofness and becomes man. Wow.
In both
What a
cases.
line.
This is
What a line.
very good definition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thus, we have perfection when the finite transcends its limits and realizes its infinity. So that's one end of the spectrum going to the other end, or the other way, or when the infinite gives up its supposed aloofness and becomes man.
That's
In
perfection.
wow,
I believe that's a spiritual perfection that Baba was talked about.
correct.
Yeah.
In both cases, the finite and the infinite do not stand outside each other. Again, key point. So it's a spectrum, but then the infinite includes everything.
Yeah.
When there is a happy and conscious blending of the finite and the infinite, we have perfection. The last line, then we have the infinite revealing itself through the finite without getting limited thereby, and the finite transcending its sense of limitation in the full knowledge of its really being the revelation of the infinite.
Can you
So,
read this again, then, from then, please?
sure, sure,
Can you
sure.
read it again?
So,
Yeah,
I'll
go ahead.
just leave you a hint. If you
Yes.
look at the way it's underlined and written here, so
Mm,
uh, oops, sorry.
that's okay.
That is it. Yeah. So if
Mhm.
you, I'll explain what EAIC is, but just as I'm reading this line again, the red underline refers to coming down from infinite to finite,
As
and
a descent. Yeah.
as a descent. And the blue underline is talking about
Uh-huh.
the ascent, right?
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
and we are just this is from our last time that we read this. We are also seeing a subtle distinction where the red portion could refer to the avatar, and the blue portion referring to the perfect master. The avatar comes again and again, and it is a descent. And
Yes.
it started also with the descent with the first God realization point where it happened. And in the case of the blue, the ascent part, it's a progress of perfection that you and I can go through, right? Uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. The red one is a God man. The blue one is a man God.
Yes,
Is
let's
a
read it again.
finite.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect, perfect. That's the point I wanted to make. Let me read it. Then we have the infinite revealing itself through the finite without getting limited thereby. And the second part, and the finite transcending its sense of limitation in the full knowledge of its really being the revelation of the infinite.
Hmm.
So it's a beautiful line, and it's a beautiful way to end this chapter on perfection. So, by the way, we use a lot of acronyms. EAIC, I think, refers to eternal avataric infinite consciousness, and that's a term
Uh-huh.
that Baba uses in beams. In beams, he
Oh,
says,
really? Huh.
yes. In beams, he says, we can open it up. Beams. So if you go to what? Fabric of the universe, advancing live stream. Yeah, here it is. Avatar as the first master. So if you go to this line here, yeah. So what happens is the first master became fused with the eternally infinite consciousness of the avatar. So that this is nothing but eternal. So if you see this line above, the first man, the I'm reading the green highlighted portion in the first paragraph. The first man to realize God as one indivisible and eternal truth was taken up into this realization by the eternal avataric infinite consciousness. So what happens is Baba, after Adam and after many other souls, was the first to go through this entire process of self-realization, reaching the point where EIAC, eternal avataric infinite consciousness, was taken up and came down to him, and he became God, right?
Oh, yeah. A state
So
2A, and yeah, internal state of God.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, right? So that's the reference that's being made here, uh, rather here, EAIC. So yeah, so maybe we stop at this point and
Yeah.
we can continue with the next chapter in the coming week. But I enjoyed my reading, though it was just you and I, Mahu. Thank you so much. It was
Thank you.
really,
Thank you.
really, yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, really, it just very enlightening, it's just, I'm hoping to just keep on remembering this, and as I'm living my life.
More than
Yeah.
remembering, putting it into practice, which is the tough part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It actually starts with baby steps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in
So,
that
are you
note,
coming
when
for
Baba says,
Amartiti?
Mhm.
Are you coming to India for Amartiti?
Actually, for Amortiti, probably I cannot.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, I used to come. Last time I was in Amortiti was 50th anniversary, which was
Okay.
quite, yeah. Then after that, I began to come in July
Okay.
uh, or August. So this time I can't because I'm trying to work a little bit for Amortiti. Also, I'm working on have invited my son to come with me this time
Okay.
in 2024, and probably at that time in the middle of the summer is a better time for him.
Very
But
good.
again, Baba has to make the call. That's beyond me. Are you going to MRTT?
Most likely, but I'm going to India even before that. But most likely, I will be making another trip just for Amartiti. But for
That's
me,
so
it's
wonderful.
yeah. But for me, it's a much shorter trip than you. I understand. For me, it's just 3 hours to India. So
And you mean Merabat? 3 hours to Merabat from where? Oh,
I'm in Dubai.
you're talking about Dubai.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm in Dubai.
So
So
when you're traveling to India from Dubai, which airport do you go to?
so I have three choices, but mostly I
I'm
fly out
sorry,
of Dubai.
did you disconnect the recording? Because we're
Uh,
talking off subject.
yes,
Let's disconnect the yeah,
let's do that. Let's do that. Yeah.
if somebody listen all the way to this.
Yeah.
What do you
So